All opinions expressed on Crosstabs are those of Bryan and Reagan and do not reflect the views, thoughts, or opinions of individual legislators or the Legislative Assembly. Relax. Some things are just for fun. Guests likewise join the show to express personal views and opinions. We desperately hope they say something funny or entertaining, but thoughts shared, whether entertaining or stultifying, are those of the individual and separate from any role or a title a guest may possess. Enjoy the show. Or don't. But don't go whining about it if it's the latter.
We're clear to engage. Time on target. 5 mics. Out.
We don't do intros either. We just cold open as soon as everybody's ready. So, I don't know if you're ready, but
I'm always
we
ready.
might as well.
What? Ready.
Isn't that kind of a thing when you're a lawmaker? You kind of have to always be ready for interaction, and because you never know when you're going to get, speaker's going to call you into their office, or you're going to have to go talk to somebody about
It's
whatever.
Like being in a monkey cage. You never know when the crap's going to get thrown at you, so you always got to be ready to dodge it. Frankly, I guess I could lie to you and tell you it otherwise, but I don't tend to tell it other than just the way it is.
Yeah. So Brian asked me to poll. You have it memorized now. I move that in compliance with Article 4, Section 19 of the Constitution, notwithstanding any rule of the House of Representatives of the 33rd Legislative Assembly, the requirement that it's a final passage, each bill be read section by section, shall be suspended for, and then you say the bill number. That'd be read by title only.
You know what's amazing is I've read that thing so many times I don't memorize it. I probably should. It's one of these days I'm going to get stuck. I'm not going to have it. In fact, the boys stole one from me one day. I was like, I know it's Article 4, Section 19. That's about it. But the hard part is whatever I say, the speaker has to repeat. So that's why it's phrased the way it's phrased.
Yeah,
so.
And most of the time it's been Gomberg, who is, I think, pro tem, right?
Yeah.
So the speaker isn't always in the chair. In fact, it's rare that she's in there. She was up there for a little bit today, but for most of the time it's the pro tem that is.
Frankly, Gomberg does a good job.
Well, she was up there for 916 because that's her signature. I mean, the union said, no, we want the speaker at the dais when you pass the union bill that they say will do nothing. They're not really going to use it, but we want it anyways.
That's probably the worst bill we've seen so far come across the House floor this session. I mean, there's worse ones coming, and I know. In fact, Monday we'll have 1098, and it's not good either. But that bill did nothing. It does nothing to help the state. It just puts us right in the crosshairs again for businesses they're going to leave. I mean, why would you want to start a business in Oregon when the legislature is doing everything it can to stop it? It's crazy.
This is true. But hey, back up real quick. So let's talk about in compliance with or whatever. What's Article 20?
It's a good question.
Or Section 20?
I have that book in my desk. I can probably read it.
What's your take on reading bills?
I mean, it's really just a tool that we have to slow things down, and that's really about the only thing we can do in the session is start making things go into slow motion, and then we start working on the weekends. And so Democrats don't like to work on the weekends either. In fact, they probably don't like it worse than we don't like it. So that's I hate reading bills, but sometimes it's just a necessary thing, and I think that's kind of where we are now in the session.
Necessary for. Give me a little bit more on that, because I find we always, in Reagan even tweeted it, we basically go to 160 days every session, no matter what. So reading bills calculated wise doesn't do anything.
Well, it can
change.
It can, because you're pushing, because the slower things get, you're backing them up, right? And you're right, it can only go to 160 days. So, I don't even know if I want to say it on a podcast, but when you get down under that certain window, then people can, go home and not come back and still be okay.
Sure.
So you're putting the squeeze to them to run their agenda. And frankly, this whole session has been about the Democrats' agenda, which is basically the union's agenda. That's what this whole thing has been really about.
Yeah. So
the tighter we can put the squeeze on them for their agenda and run the clock out, the less they're going to get done.
Yeah. No, I think that's I know that that's part of the strategy to slow things down. I when you read, like reading now is way more important than in May or in April.
Yeah,
because because before it's all calculated, right? I mean, it even says on the blue sheets, how long it takes if you got to read this bill, right? So it just doesn't.
Yeah.
I think the other tactics are more valuable until you get closer to the number.
I see a hand in a window, and it's got a really expensive looking bracelet on it. I'm guessing
wow.
It to you.
Wait, do we have a guest? Do we have a guest on the? We have a guest in the podcast. We're live on the podcast, but she's crazy. Representative Brees Iverson. She's. You want us to come say hi on the podcast real quick? Wow.
She's got some really expensive hardware on that wrist. I see that. That's nice. So what is he buttering you up for?
Our podcast listeners can see exactly what she's trying to show us here.
I can see it.
It was all about the sparkle, and my husband absolutely blew it away today on our 20-year anniversary.
Oh, wow.
With a beautiful diamond bracelet, and the man is amazing.
Congratulations.
Amazing. Every girl deserves a Bryan.
Congratulations on 20 years. This is what it gets like in June, though, here in the legislature. Not to take anything away from your happiness, and congratulations on all of that. My wife and I are going to be 10 years here later at the end of the month.
Really?
And yeah,
you don't even
crazy.
look old enough to have been married 10 years.
Kid you not. I got married at 19, though. That's why. That's the only reason.
She was 15, but
I was going to say, how old was she?
There's laws, Bryan. Anyway, so not to take away from any of the enjoyment stuff, but it does it gets really squirrely here at the end. Everybody's just we've been here. We're watching Washington already sine died. That was like a month ago. Yeah. Nevada just sine died, and now there are Republican governors vetoing all the garbage. Wish we had that, right? But we're just out here. We're just the kid that's like enrolled in summer school, just looking out the window at everybody who's on summer break. And we're still locked in our prison here, dealing with all of this, all of the stuff they want to run. But
well, you notice today it got kind of fun on the floor when I made a motion to suspend reading, and our own party blocked the motion, which is pretty funny. So that's okay. So we read the rest of the bills for the rest of the day, but they're all one pagers. So. Pretty
good, yeah. We're now almost 7 minutes in. We're here with Representative Virgil Osborne.
Yeah, right.
From Roseburg, in case anybody was wondering.
Thanks for having us.
Where it's really, I can send you the file. This could be an On the Verge crossover episode with Crosstabs.
There you go.
Because you have a podcast, and one of the questions. One of us prepared for this, and one of us didn't. You can take a guess at who prepared.
The guy with time.
Well, no. Funny enough, Bryan wrote all the questions.
Okay.
I was actually working for my boss. I don't know if Senator Anderson had anything for today, because his chief of staff was doing the podcast stuff.
Well, first off, I pass bills in the Senate. You guys read bills in the House, and your backlog is so far down the.
Hey, look, we can't be responsible for you guys voting with the Democrats in the Senate. That's not our fault.
Yes, this is true. No, so we got a couple things done ready for the episode. I've been an admirer of yours for a while now since you came in here, and I think having some folks from Roseburg and rural Oregon, you come at it from a different perspective, which I think we were kind of missing before. I think you come at it from a working man's perspective, blue collar perspective, also somebody who still has a business, somebody who's still working, and we have some of those here, but I don't think there was enough of them. I think we definitely younged down the legislature the last, the age has come way down over the last couple of cycles. Yeah. And I think you were some of that class that came in where there was just a lot younger people. And I think it's really changed the perspective a little bit, because I think this place was full of a lot of older, either early retired or retired folks that,
that's not the only way you can afford to be in the legislature.
Yeah. Look more like the Senate and the House.
It's not like it pays a lot of money to be here.
Yeah, right. So what got you, let's just back up real quick and just say, what got Virgil Osborne to just say, screw it, I'm going to run? I know you have a little bit of local government background, planning commission stuff, but what to make the leap to get to here? Where'd that start?
Well, I've actually told this story a lot. My buddy Trent Drake, he's my campaign manager, still a good friend. He's on our podcast that we put on every week. He and I were just sitting around one day, eating a pizza, drinking beer, and we're talking about what can I do to make a difference in the community. I mean, obviously, being in the planning commission was one thing. Being part of search and rescue has always been a big deal for me. I've been doing that for over 20 years, and I just love the community. I had some issues with our representation that we currently had at the time. I didn't feel like the particular person was conservative enough, and I don't think he was loud enough. I don't think he was getting the message. We're not necessarily going to win every battle because we're in a minority party, but we better darn well engage in those battles, and we should be here. We should be, within reason and, obviously professional. We should be letting them know how we feel. I represent the people, and that was my intention. So, I announced to him that and he was in ailing health anyway, but I announced to him that I was going to run, and then it became, and unfortunately for him, he passed away during the primary.
Rep Leaf.
Rep Leaf, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, good guy. He was a friend of mine, took my high school pictures and everything else, but I just felt like it was a time for rural Oregon to get a voice, and I didn't feel like at least that part of rural Oregon had a voice, and I thought I could do that. And so far, I've been here 3 years, and they haven't kicked me out yet, so I'm still going. So
I liked it though that that change in generations, literally, because the guy who took your high school photos, I'm assuming as an adult, is now the one that you kind of replaced in the legislature, and so that really is that kind of generational change. And
plus, I think you need somebody. I mean, from a business standpoint, I mean, I've ran a multi-million-dollar business up until 2 years ago in November when I retired from that business when I came here. But I also own a business and still do. I mean, I've had it since 2014, and I think you need that business background to understand the bills you're passing. Because I mean, frankly, when we're in committee and I'm looking around and I've got people making business decisions that have never owned a business, never signed the back side of a pay or the front side of a paycheck, only the back. It's hard to give them, it's like, really, I mean, obviously you're qualified because you were elected, but that doesn't mean you know what you're talking about. And so I feel like I bring that perspective a little bit to I know about taxes. I paid lots of taxes. So
that committee you speak of, the Commerce and SUU committee,
yeah,
I think is what it's called. Yeah, isn't that the one? Oh, wait, consumer protection. Sorry. But it seems like they created that committee just to come up with ways to sue.
Some folks in the business lobby refer to it as the Committee on Communism and Litigation.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I mean, again, and you're not wrong. I mean, we do seem to, participate and help with the bills that really don't do business well. What the ironic thing about that is that also on the Small Business and Economic Development Committee as well, and we talk a big talk like we're going to really help out the community, help out businesses, make Oregon more business friendly, which we all know it's not. But yet we pass these bills out of committee that are like, it's just not going to help business. And frankly, a lot of the consumer part of the consumer protection is not protecting the consumer. So I mean, it's been a challenge, but Rome wasn't built in a day.
Was there a kind of a signature, like key, really bad bill that kind of came out of there that you saw?
Out of consumer protection, I mean, there was like a lot of bad bills that came out of there. Top of my head, there was, let's see, let me think. What was the one that probably stood out the most? There were just lots of bills that were just
like
more
paper. Isn't it like paper cuts? Doesn't it feel like paper cuts this session? Like
death by a thousand
there's just a lot of like little technical things that are just making it harder.
Yeah.
And I think you're onto the part about just making business. It's like even 916, right? Like it's not the end of the world.
Right.
It's just another step closer to the cliff.
Yeah.
And it just seems like we just keep inching further and further to the bottom. I mean, I think Senator Bonham said it once in his committee, which it was fun. It's like he almost seems like it's a race to the bottom, and Oregon's, putting on their running shoes instead of we should be trying to go the other way. Like, how do we become more business friendly? Because really, the state, it's very simple. If we employ people, we get taxes. We are a tax and spend state. So if you basically employ people, that's a lot of taxes, and our coffers get full, and then they can do all the programs they want to do.
Yeah, it's just people don't understand it's a top-down thing, right? I mean, the more businesses that we can actually bring in, the more, and that's the problem. When you look at the revenue reports, you'll see all of this growth in the business, but that growth is in government-funded business, healthcare, right? I mean, those numbers are growing. When the private sector is going the other direction, it's not growing. And the fact is, the more business we can bring in, the more taxes the state gets to take from the paychecks, and but we don't seem to look at it that way. I think we look at it all more on a socialist basis, at least. Well, I say we. This building looks at it, in general. I sure don't, but they. Well, I'm always careful, not to pick on my folks across the aisle on the House floor. But I guess we're not on the House floor right now. We're in a podcast, so
so let's pick on somebody. Let's see who we're going to start with.
Well, I mean, they own the bad decisions, and and I honestly, I feel like the theme of this session for me is like, let's not fix their bad decisions. Let's let them own them, and let's let them take them to the bottom. We can't stop them. We can only make these things slightly better. Some of these bills slightly, but 916 had, I don't know how many, had 7 amendments or something to it, and it was still a crappy bill. But anyway,
do you think that, because I hear that strategy, because there's the two strategies. There's the let them run the bad stuff. Well, there's really three strategies. There's kill the bad stuff, which is hard to do in the super minority, right? You need a lot of Democrat help to get that done. Yep. And you need all the R's to be on the same page, which is part of the second strategy, which is make the bad bills less bad. And, sometimes that's a good strategy too. And then there's a third strategy, the one you're kind of highlighting, and it sounds like kind of your team on the leadership team is kind of more in the camp of, we're not going to fix their bad decisions. So when it goes to that strategy, the next step is you got to highlight those things. You got to make sure that people hear about them.
Oh yeah.
And I think that is the part that we're running into as being the hardest, is how do you drive that message home to voters, right? And how do you make sure, or not voters in the sense right now, because we're not in the campaign season, but eventually it will get into the campaign season. But right now it's just Oregonians. How do you effectively tell Oregonians what's going on here? Because most people that aren't involved in this process, there's 1,000 people maybe that care about this process. You got legislators, staff, lobbyists, agencies, right? That's about it. So how do you get outside of that group to the people who don't even know we're in session?
Well, I think we're doing it with things like podcasts. I mean, that's why I started my podcast, to get the message out. We tell the truth on my podcast, and it's the hardcore truth. Sometimes not everybody likes what we have to say, and I'm sure not everybody will like what I have to say here. But ask the committee, the Climate, Energy, and Environment Committee, what they think about Senate Bill 83 and my comments that I had at that. I mean, in that way, we put that right on social media, and we're going to keep blowing it up. But we let down 4 million people in this state, realistically, not because of the policy doing what we did, but the fact is, we didn't make a decision based on those 4 million people. We made a decision based on a Democrat agenda, and I let them know that. So I didn't make a lot of friends. But
I actually pulled a little quote that you said about that. When I see a bill that made it through the Senate with unanimous consent, and it comes to this committee, and we kill it, I know that everyone in this committee knows better, said Rep. Virgil Osborne.
I did say that.
And I know why we're sending it the rules. And I think it's a very sad day for the citizens of Oregon that we're more concerned with our agenda than we are for doing what's right for the people of Oregon.
Amen. Pass the crackers.
Reagan and I have talked at length with Senate Bill 83, and I'm glad that you're on it too, because I think we know why they sent it the rules. I mean, everybody does that. The 1,000 people or so that we say, and based on Ledge Media, I think it's around 4,500. That's what we noticed. There's about 800. We pulled the stats. Did I send that to you? I think I sent it to you. It was pretty good. It was about 800 people watch different committees online, and about 4,500 people watch floor, on average, something like that, right? So that's who's really watching what's happening in this universe, right? This nut house that we live in. But in regards to Senate Bill 83, it makes zero sense for the Democrats to try to hold that bill up for wildfire funding when they know that I think it's Republicans sit back and just say, fine, hold it up.
Well, I think we're probably there.
Yeah. I think they realize of their mistake now, because we're like, you guys created the problem.
Yeah.
You created the maps in the first place. We all hated the maps in the first place.
Well, if you listen to the rest of that hearing, you'll hear Representative Gamba say that we have this eloquent way of fixing this problem by embracing Senator Golden's kicker tax bill,
Yeah.
right? So what they did was they sent that bill on their agenda. They sent that bill down there to rules, I think it was, so that they could hold it in lieu of us agreeing to the kicker tax take, which we don't need to do. And you're right. I mean, it's a bad decision on their part, and I hope to heck that they're going to own it. But I think it's deeper than that. I think that this building works like a 3D chess. People talk about that, right? I think that what we have, what is today, the 4th, right? So we have 23, 24, 25 days left to go, roughly. Actually working days a lot less than that. I think what we're going to see, this is just my guess, but we're going to
see. If he rebuilds, it could be every day.
It could be every day. but I think what they're going to do is they're going to pull. They're building leverage against us, right? Because they need our votes on these taxes. They can't. Technically, I mean, think about it. They're one short, unfortunately, because somebody's sick. They need our votes, and they need at least one, and I think they'd probably like to see 3.
Yeah.
And mark my words, you're going to see a gun bill as leverage, right? Maybe 2 gun bills, but it's going to be, well, we'll let 3075 stay where it belongs, and in the junk pile, maybe 3076 if you guys will agree to the kicker tax. So, and this is purely hypothetical, but
Sure.
in the event that happens, it puts the Republicans in a situation where what do we do, right? Do we vote yes on a kicker tax? Do we give 3 of our members the go to take your kicker? Or do we stand firm and lose the gun bill? I mean, that's the games that get played here.
And the hard part for us that puts us in a bind is now you have constituencies, right? Within now each of those worlds that are basically vying against saying, no, screw you, don't let the gun bills go through.
They hate both of those bills.
Yeah, and then you got all the the taxpayer association groups that are all saying, hell no. Then you got kind of the general, I think really all of us that live in rural Oregon, which the 3 of us all live in rural Oregon, know that the wildfire maps are really, really bad, and repealing those so you got really more a mass idea that's bad. But I also think that with Senate Bill 83, the Democrats have some problems within their own caucus on Senate Bill 83. So,
well, they do.
They created the mess. So I think we call their bluff on it. I don't think, and a kicker, they need 2/3. So that upset, they need, 4 votes. And they got to get to 40.
36, I think.
For 2/3?
It's 40 for the kicker.
Yeah.
I thought it was 36.
Yeah.
No.
So you have
there you go.
They're never going to get
6 or more Republicans to get there.
I think if that happens, you're going to see 6 Republicans lose their seats.
Yeah.
I hope
not for taking the kicker. Like that's it's sacrilegious. They always say, the bottle bill's the Oregon way, and they say, the beaches and all things. Well, guess what else is? The kicker. The kicker is the Oregon way too. And,
and we're talking about these really crappy bills. We haven't even talked about transportation yet. I mean, we still don't have a bill number on transportation unless
you mean in session.
No, in session. And maybe they got it there today. I heard there was a press release today, so I don't know if they've actually, I don't know what.
Well, what that was, and I think it's kind of interesting, and I was kind of evaluating this, sending it around to some Republican staff, but it was basically 3 representatives. It was Gamba, it was Pham, and it was Finger McDonald. And so,
really?
Gamba and Pham, I think Finger McDonald's new, so you kind of don't know exactly where she's at. I don't think anybody necessarily thought she was on the hard left spectrum, but she's definitely joining up with a couple of more perceived pretty hard left Democrats, especially on the environment issues. Both of them are very hardcore on environment. But so here's what it did. They put together a crosswalk is what they call it these days. It's one of the most annoying phrases in the legislature when somebody asks for a crosswalk. And basically what they're asking for is a column on the left of all the different policy, and then how this bill does with it, and this is what current law does with it, and this is what the amendments would do. But anyway, it's their SMART framework. So I want to get you can just vote up and down on any of these. 40 cent increase on the gas tax. So we're doubling the gas tax.
Yeah, I'm a hard no.
No, okay. How about a 2% sales tax?
I'm not even no.
Oh, okay. What about 1% sales tax? Oh, and this is just on sales of new and then used cars.
I'm a no on any sales tax.
Man, okay. Increasing the weight mile, 16.9%.
Again? No.
All right. How about just big increases for titles, vehicle registration? No?
Yeah, no.
Oh,
No,
okay.
not unless
And
you're
then
just trying to catch
somehow-
up with California.
And this is the part I do not believe. And of course, anybody can write a thing on a spreadsheet and then say, it's minimal fiscal on climate and cost accountability. I mean, great. It sounds magical.
I got a better idea. How about we cut our DEI programs within ODOT? That will save what, 24 million or whatever that is.
Well, so at least in this, they acknowledge how much money this is going to raise. I mean, literally doubling the gas tax raises a lot of money.
Yeah.
Prioritize overwhelming amount of revenue. So literally, they're sitting there and they're like 40 cent gas tax increase. Wow, that's an overwhelming amount of money. What are we even going to do with all this, right? And so then they put in here, it's towards maintenance of Oregon's existing roads and bridges, ongoing operations need, preventing layoffs from ODOT staff. So thankfully, nobody at ODOT loses their job despite running one of the worst run agencies in the entire place. And then they put in here just all kinds of stuff. Fully fund safe routes to schools. I don't think anybody opposes safe routes to schools, but $150 million a biennium, $300 million for great streets. Man, our streets are going to be paid with gold based on these numbers.
Our streets are in horrible
But
condition.
so I think they're trying to push the conversation much further. And you only see, I think that the main group that was doing stuff, so the joint committee's chairs, they put out a 20-cent increase, and that's slowly phased in. They only did a small increase on what is it, the payroll tax that funds transit, right? And these guys want to go to 0.5 instead of 0.18, which is what they wanted to raise it to. It's 0.1 now. I mean, they just want to literally, they're going to create overwhelming amounts of revenue, they think, except for they haven't anticipated how many businesses and people will leave because of these taxes, and your revenues will just fall off, and you won't even have as much money as you think.
I mean, you said a lot, but I mean,
yes.
The bottom line is mass transit in this state is really only valid in two real areas, right? The Portland and maybe some of the larger urban areas, Eugene and Salem. The rest of us and the rest of the state, we don't use mass transit because we live too far away to, I don't get in on the bus in front of my house and take the bus 10 miles to the town to go shopping because there is no bus where I live, right? So the transit
Harleys is mass transit in a rural area.
So the transit stuff needs to be really cut back, right? I mean, it needs to take a big haircut. You look at downtown Portland and all this, the money, the millions, and I saw the number the other day. It was like in the high, I don't know, double-digit millions that's spent for Portland, and nobody uses the transit up there. I mean, they just don't. I mean, occasionally people be on it, but the mass transit's a dangerous place to go. It's a nasty thing to ride on, and there's nobody in the seats. So we're just pissing the money in the wind, and I think that money needs to be cut, right? It needs to be very, better managed. But when it comes to Gamba, I'm just going to throw him under the bus because I'm not a fan of Gamba, the guy that called me a petulant child because I don't want to pay my fair share of taxes. Believe me, I probably pay a hell of a lot more taxes than he does because I work for a living on top of having the position I'm in. He doesn't give a damn about your vehicle. He wants to take away your vehicle, and that is how they do it. I was in Denmark. Price of fuel was $8.50 a gallon, right? So how do you take away people's ability to drive? You make it so expensive that they won't, right? Yeah. And if they do, they pay the penalty for it. So that's his theory, right? I mean, he's going to save the world by saving Oregon, one bad bill at a time.
It's mostly their that's what they're trying to do, right? The Zen tax they're talking about, right? And all the other. Yeah. So if they don't want you to smoke cigarettes, they'll tax it to the point to where they think at some point the pinch point gets too high, right? That you can't buy cigarettes or you can't buy alcohol or you can't drive your car, that you'll choose the alternative because the cost is just too great. But what we don't have is you talked about it with transport, and everybody knows that listens to our pod how much I love public transportation. It's nobody's on it. It's dangerous. It smells like shit. It smells like a sewer.
Because it is shit.
Homeless people sit there on it. They ride for free. Nobody makes them get off. It's pointless and stupid. Ride your bike or walk if you're actually living in a big city. Because in New York City, tons of people walk and ride bikes and stuff like that. So because you don't want to go down to the subway because it's horrible, right? I mean,
listen, in Denmark, everybody rides a bike. I mean, that is the traffic jam in the afternoon.
Because you can't, in like a bus, to your point, anywhere outside, even take Salem, even right? If I can't go get on the bus. I got to walk 6 blocks to get to a bus stop.
Right.
And then if I want to go to the grocery store, how am I going to bring the groceries home? And then, what if I got to go to Rite Aid after I go to the grocery store? What am I going to do with it's just not a feasible scenario. And they just want to shove it down our throats. And they're going to say, you're going to like it.
Right.
And you have to just say, no, if Portland wants to do that, that's Portland choosing to do that. The state should not have to pay for their policy decisions to do something that we don't agree with. Now, if Portland wants to charge their employees and do a whole employee tax or whatever, but why should the metro area even it's just it doesn't make a lot of sense. And
Portland is the highest taxes in the state already in the metro area of Portland for everything. And so, I mean, and that's why you can buy a skyscraper in downtown Portland for pennies on the dollar right now because the businesses are bailing out.
Yeah. Hey, I'm putting together a group of people. We're all throwing like 20 grand. We think we'd come in with a couple hundred and figured we could make that the Republican headquarters right up there with the restaurant and stuff.
I like it. We'll have more trouble paying the taxes than we will paying the mortgage.
I know. That's the crazy part about it. It sold for the Pink Tower is what we're talking about downtown, and most people it sold in 2017 or 2014, I forget, but it was like $300 million. And they have it listed for $87 million. I mean, that tells you.
And I go off on a little bit of a Portland tangent here, but Portland wants to bring this baseball stadium into town, right? And that's an $850 million ask. I realize it's a bonded thing, and it's a little bit of a weird way to get to where they want to be, but. We had the mayor come in front of our committee and we talked about this, right? And one of the things and I can't find it, I have to go back and look at it. But one of the things we talked about was I said, if you're going to create this big, deal with all this, parking and all this traffic and all this mass transit, you need to spend some money on your police and security. Oh yeah, absolutely. We're planning on doing that. We've got that all worked out. What did I just hear last week? They cut $2 million out of their police budget in downtown. It's like for parks in lieu of that. Yeah. So I'm going, Portland doesn't get it. I mean, they're of course, our city council is a joke, but the mayor, I thought this guy might be better than the last guy. At least this guy comes to committee in person. The last guy, I can't even think of his name. Wheeler. He wouldn't even show up in person. He would
hashtag Wheeler sucks.
Yeah. He would just, he would just do a Zoom call. He didn't have I don't know if we didn't have the guts or just didn't have the time to waste.
Yeah, he surprisingly looks like Wheeler too, which is kind of weird. I think there's something odd there. I don't know.
Well, and the mayor before him, Sam, what's his name? They're just kind of all look. Sam Adams. They all kind of look the same. Well, I mean, Portland has a type, and they just keep electing him as mayor. But back to that. So I'm going to try to find the article here, but I don't know if you saw this. There's Portland city councilors that want to hire a consultant to teach them how to be an effective city council. And I just want to sit these guys down and tell them, and whatever the contract is, if it's 250 grand, I'll just take half and just sit them down and say, your problem is you got half your council, they're communists, and half of you that are somewhat capitalists. And those two systems don't work together. And so they want to talk about doing all of these things. I mean, a lot of the stuff we're experimenting with here, they've already done, right? Yeah. They have this, they had the bill to ban AI software for, the landlords to set their rents and whatever. Portland was already stomping hard on trying to get that passed, right? And so one of the things, and the same thing with like ranked choice voting, Portland did ranked choice voting, and then they tried to put it on the ballot statewide. It's like, will you guys not let any of this stuff just sit for 2 years and find out, does it work? Does it not work? Right? And then before you roll it out statewide, but they can't help themselves. They're just looking for stuff to do. And
I can tell them how to become more effective council. It's really simple. You get a stamp with the word no, and you put it on every freaking thing you do, because that's what they need to start doing. I mean, they don't have any money either. I mean, they're
No.
they're over budgeted. They don't know what to, politics is not hard. It's just not, right? I mean, you look at what's good for the people that you represent, and you make sure you do that. Now, some of these policies that are going on in Portland, they're not even good for the people that live in Portland. I mean, a majority of them aren't, which is sad because I see people like Daniel Wynn. He's one of our legislators that's a business owner in Portland, and he'll vote, at the agenda of the Democrats. He'll vote with their agenda on things. Hell, he voted on 916 today. It's like, what is wrong with you? How could you think this is a good idea when your employees go on strike and you're paying them? How is that good? It's not good for you, but yet they did.
Do we even know, like, because here's his UI, he's going to pay more, basically, for that. Ultimately. A follow up on the transportation thing. I think the biggest thing they have a problem with is, especially and I'm saying I was going to say the Democrats have a problem with, is transportation now is got with Senator Pham and the other two representatives. They've now pitched the far left, if you want to say that, of their party.
Yeah.
This is our agenda.
Yeah.
So now, because they didn't put because you haven't seen a transportation package. I haven't seen a transportation package. I know there's one being discussed somewhere.
Yeah.
But
behind closed doors. And
since it's not out there in the ether,
right.
And even if it was discussed with you behind closed doors, like, hey, here's kind of the shit on the table, right? This is what great. At least you're in the know, right? But they're not even giving us that.
No.
They're giving us kernels that's coming out.
It's all garbage.
Yeah. And so then when Senator Pham's group comes out and puts her marker down, they're positioning it in a tougher way, because will they vote for a less watered down transportation package? Will even the Democrats vote for that? And I think they're in a tough position, because they need, and it's got to come out of the House because it's a tax. So it's got to start there, and they need 36 votes. So if you lose Democrats, it makes it even harder for them to pass something. And Republicans are going to be like, well, but we're not getting anything for $3 billion. Like
we presented a bill. Not a bill, but we presented an entire package that they have obviously shit on. They don't. That's not as important to them as. It slipped in my mind for a second when you said Pham. I was thinking of the Pham in the House.
Yeah,
the other
there's
Pham.
A couple of them. Yeah.
So there's two people in this building that
it's
are
like Levy.
There's two people in this building that are ultra environmentalists, right? Gamba and Pham, right? Two of the worst, right? So why would you, as a Democrat Party, put those two people on the front lines for a transportation package when you know damn well their only agenda is going to be to get rid of vehicles, get rid of everything they can? If it was up to them, we wouldn't need ODOT, because we wouldn't have any. We might have some public transportation, but we wouldn't have no roads or streets because we're not going to drive. So.
Well, and this is what, to your point, though, I don't think they did put them out there. This is them going rogue on them. Because,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because they're not. Yeah, they're going rogue because guess what? They're not sharing it with their party.
Nice.
So if you got this group of people that are, on this transportation stuff, working with the speaker's office that is trying to put together a package in the president's office, but they're not even letting the Democrats, the rank and file Democrats, don't even know what's going on.
Okay, so I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So now that makes sense, because they're digging and scratching, trying to save the climate protection program. That's what they're doing. So if they can find another way to fund this thing without taking money out of seeding justice, then they'll do it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think when the real plan comes out, we're going to see a real watered down version of everything. And because I think the Democrats want to win, they want to come out and say, we got a package across, because they've been saying it too long.
Yeah.
Too long now that we're going to have a transportation package. And when you don't really see anything and it doesn't really talk about it, you can't just throw it out with 3 days to go and say, here it is, unless it's kind of just a watered down maintenance kind of package. I fear that's what
they might kick it down the road into the short session. Maybe, I don't know.
And there's still a chance. I mean, there's one of the headlines we haven't covered yet is that in the one big beautiful bill, there's a trigger that if you provide healthcare to illegal immigrants, and use any federal money to do that. We don't use a ton because there isn't a lot there, but we still have a little over 100 million projected this next budget for illegal immigrant and healthcare. They'll actually turn off your Medicaid match for legal healthcare, which is a lot more of it, and that becomes very expensive very fast. And so if they feel the need, regardless whether they want to keep it and fund it or whether they want to jettison it and fund it, they're going to have to. Right now, it's in the budget. So if they pass the budget as is and they fund illegal immigrant healthcare, there's probably a special session in our future too. And people
if we're not busy that day,
hate special sessions. Yeah, I mean that's the thing, and you kind of have to suss that out. Is okay, are we going to show up? What's the plan? I mean, I think either way, it's really bad for Democrats. I mean, the federal changes here, they want to stick up for all of the DEI and everything that they're out there doing. But Trump's going to make it really difficult to do that. And at the end of the day, who's going to win? And it's always been a battle between the social and the budget people. And pretty much usually the budget people win those fights at the end of the day because they've killed so many bills with radical social agenda in order to preserve and make sure they have budgets and stuff like that. I mean, that was 2023. They jettisoned constitutional amendments to protect all kinds of their social agenda to preserve their budgets and everything. So who's going to win that fight? Did they elect finally enough left-wingers, true believers to go, heck with the budget. We don't care what it looks like. We're going to go ahead with the social stuff. I mean, that's really the battle that's taking place kind of
within the state,
in this state, in between Democrats. They know where we stand on it. Fiscally responsible budgets and no crazy social stuff, but they're fighting amongst themselves.
They are, and unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, the speaker has done a pretty poor job of trying to keep this whole session focused. But look, I mean, when you think about what the Democrats have to deal with this session, there's nothing good, right? I mean, everything that in their agenda is shit. It just is. I mean, you've got taxes, you've got wildfire funding, you've got transportation, and then you got to keep the unions happy with all this other stuff, right? So I mean, if I'm a Democrat, and I interestingly enough, I just rode up in the elevator with an unnamed Democrat who said that they were just really disgusted that 916 passed, even though they voted yes on it. I said, well, why'd you vote yes on it? They were going to break our arm if we didn't. I said, well, I just hope that at some point you guys finally get to that point where enough is enough. And that particular person said, I think we're almost there. So I think there's...
Rep Helm?
No,
I'm just kidding.
Not going to say not going to say a name. But I do believe that there is a growing number in that. I mean, I see it in the votes, right? I mean, in the Democrat Party, at least in the House, that are like, this doesn't make sense. This is an agenda-driven session, and the agenda is not good for the state.
Well, and it's not even a clear agenda. It's kind of seems like this very ad hoc-ish. Reagan and I talked a lot about it early on in session. We called it a rudderless session because there really wasn't a lot of leadership from the leaders, the two on the Democrat side that were really driving the agenda. Because if you said transportation is going to be the thing, that's good, that's part of my agenda, you would be talking about all the things with transportation. And they did the Ways and Means road.
25 days left to go, and we still don't have a transportation package. Obviously,
they did a Ways and Means roadshow where they go around the state, and nowhere in there you could have added transportation to that and done an hour on transportation and what are your guys' transportation needs? And over here in Klamath Falls where they did one, or up in Portland, and then all the areas to hear from the people on specific things. But they didn't do that, so you could drive that agenda if you wanted to, because you are the speaker and you are the president of the Senate. They own the agenda.
They own every bad piece of it.
Yeah, and now you end up with this hodgepodge of, like you said, just kind of an amalgam of kind of junk that doesn't really help anybody. And it doesn't also, besides the unions, it serves their constituency. And I know that's why they vote yes. Like you said, whoever you rode up on the elevator with, they're going to vote yes because they know they have to for campaigns.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I always get to. They did it to retain power.
Because
that's more important than actually doing good policy.
100%. You're absolutely right. But I also think that in this case, they're getting to the point where they're hurting their own side, right? I mean, I thought we were there in 22. We did pick up some seats in 23. But I think maybe we're getting there again. And the cool thing about it is I just hate the environmental agenda. I hate it.
Oh,
I hate
it's the worst.
about it. Climate change agenda, it's all crap, and they all know I hate it. Hopefully, I get to stay on that committee. I think they like to see me go away because I am the anti-Gamba, and he doesn't bother me. But anyway, I think that at some point, that's got to have to change because Trump's not supporting their agenda anymore. We're not doing electric car rebate program through the feds anymore. We're not doing Trump's solar. Basically, we're no solar, we're no wind. Now we're going to start opening up the oil fields. We're going to start drilling again. So Oregon kind of has to make a decision. Do we want to continue on down the toilet, or do we want to start going, oh, we better get on board here, or we're going to be the only state in the union where gas is $8 a gallon? And by the way, if gas is $8 a gallon, go back to the budget and about the financial part of the thing, people start voting with their pocketbook. And they're going to go, well, and I'm going to say, hey, I'm a Republican. I didn't vote for any of this crap. Mm-hmm. I think gas should be $2 a gallon right now. Why isn't it? Well, because our Democrat friends are trying to outlaw it. I mean, we're shutting down gas plants as well, natural gas. I mean, we're doing everything wrong, in my opinion, in this state.
And Idaho and Utah get redder.
Exactly.
So I was just I just pulled up the House Democrats agenda, and here's their 5 agenda points. And they don't have any bills listed on here. It'll be interesting to see what they try to shove in here at the end.
Just from the start of session?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fighting for an affordable Oregon. Well, pretty much a lot of the stuff they run gets a little bit more expensive. Making government work. And I think on the margins, there's a couple of people that are trying to do the right thing on a handful of things. But writ large, we had Dogami and Natural Resources, right? That agency processes maybe 35 permits a year, and they needed a bunch more people. They raised fees 100%. They're about to have a person per permit in that agency. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what are you going to do? You're gonna send your one email saying, hey, can you update this part of your permit, and then spend 2 weeks on vacation or paid vacation while they're supposed to be working. Keep Oregonians safe. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, well, let's cut the budget on the police.
They didn't add a single new trooper. And there was a pop to do it, and it was only on I-5 with state police on the policing the highest causes of crashes. So not even really law enforcement taking down bad guys, but just preventing death. And they can't even fund that. They keep it exact because the minute they add an increased trooper, all the anti-police people come at them being like, I can't believe you hate brown people and all that. And then protecting basic rights and freedoms. And it really depends on what you mean by basic freedoms. Not the Second Amendment, not the right to be alive, right? And their basic rights are
they protect
abortion.
The DEI and the LGBTQ,
right?
Whatever you call it. Those are, Anyway,
and then delivering a roadmap forward. Holy smokes. I mean, the roadmap forward is yikes. That's basically all it is. And there isn't a plan. I mean, they're basically just trying to get barely through the session. And I don't even think they have a plan for short and where they want to go. That's the thing is I think that they do not lay out a vision for what it is. And that's where if we can communicate successfully through our podcasts and other mediums, a clear vision of what we want Oregon to be. And that's why we were talking about this on our last podcast, which I meant to push play on and send out to everybody. I'm going to have to do it when we're done on this one. We need to pick 3 things and just run on those 3 things all the time. And yes, there's going to be other issues and we're going to advocate for those in the building, but to voters, we got to pick 3 things that will change their vote. Not 80% of people agree with, but are actually going to flip them from voting Democrat to R. We have to figure out what are the issues that actually motivate people to change their behavior. And then we just got to hammer those home. So whatever Democrats are talking about, we bring it back to those 3 things that we're talking about, right?
Well, yeah, and those are easy. I mean, we got lots of things to pick from, but number one, public safety, right? Yeah. If you're not safe in your home, nothing else matters, right? If you have no police force and crime is rampant like we saw in 20 COVID era, that should be probably our number one priority. Number 2 is taxes, right? I mean, nobody wants to increase taxes, and whether it doesn't matter which side you're on. And number 3 would just be cost of living, right? I mean,
it's all, if you look at really what people care about right now, cost of living is about 50% because they think about homelessness and they call housing and homelessness, and then they say cost of living, and then when you drill into cost of living, it's usually related to housing, right? So like their cost of rent or whatever it is that they're paying. So the reality is that cost of living scenario around your house and how much you pay just to live is probably 50%, and then you get into crime and some of the other stuff, right? And I think and we saw with the crime, like Friday Ways and Means, there was a discussion on the state police budget, right? We're not adding troopers. We have less troopers.
Right.
And Republicans brought it up, and they, Vicky, who was the fun one that, represented Brees Iverson, that broke in on our anniversary. I think she's upset we're doing a podcast on our anniversary. Luckily, I'm taking her to dinner. Don't worry, Representative. But
it's a good thing.
But she and a bunch of, and I think Bonham brought up, a bunch of other people talked about, is like, well, why aren't we adding more state troopers? And Democrats' response was, I was like, well, there's county budgets and there's city budgets, because they brought up the Portland thing, cutting it. But what I don't think they understand is in rural Oregon, without state troopers, because we've already got strain on the sheriffs and the city police already.
Yeah.
So they all rely on each other.
Yeah.
So when there's a call, like if you're outside, you're in Sutherland, and you're, and the Sutherland police says, I don't know, how many cops they got? 5? Maybe 10?
They probably have about a dozen or maybe even 15, yeah.
Yeah, so they got, but on duty at any given time, probably 5,
probably between
right?
3 and 5.
2, 3, yeah.
Yeah.
So something happens.
Right.
They rely on the county. Well, what if and Douglas County, by the way, big county.
Yeah.
What if there's a big thing happening in Reedsport?
Yeah.
Where all the county sheriffs are over there? Who's next on the list to respond?
State police.
State police. But what happens? You have one, and he's dealing with a traffic accident.
Listen,
on I-5.
There's times of the day when we don't even have one.
Yeah. And I think what they don't understand is, like, all of that stuff is symbiotic relationship that starts at the top.
Yeah.
And by the way, we're the top, right? And so you got to have state troopers out there, and they're patrolling, because that takes the pressure off the county, that takes the pressure off the city, and then they all back each other up.
They do,
and
they work
that's
together.
how you keep people safe.
And you made it a point to say that the size of Douglas County. So Douglas County is a little over 5,000 square miles, right? And that's if it was flat. So it's obviously not flat. If you flattened out every mountain, it'd be considerably bigger. Working in search and rescue with the Sheriff's Department, when I get a call out, I run the snowcat in the wintertime, and then I do other stuff during the off season as well. But I might get a call and I get every year several calls to Crater Lake, right? It's 2 hours for me to get there. Once I get to the shed, get the snowcat, we keep it loaded. And assuming the weather,
right. You got Crater Lake in your district.
Well, it's right on the border.
It's right on the border. Yeah, Douglas kind of goes really far.
Yeah,
but Crater Lake.
But assuming a couple of things, assuming the weather isn't horrible, which it generally always is, because we always go out at night, and assuming that things go smoothly, I go to the shed, I get the cat, I drive a big truck that we tow it with, and this could be an emergency call. Now, I've had calls where we've been in Reedsport at night working on a couple lost kids. This it happened a few years back on Thanksgiving. At the very same time, we get a call out to go to Diamond Lake, right? So our teams, and this is just search and rescue teams, we all are, work for the Sheriff's Department, but you think about the sheriff and the county and the cities, they all deal with the same stuff, right? I mean, the distance between Reedsport and Diamond Lake, if you're hauling ass with your lights and sirens, is 4 hours.
Wow.
I mean, it's not an easy response. So, and that's the part of this building that drives me nuts, because these folks that are sitting in our committees and sitting on the floor, some of them have never seen what a mountain looks like. I'll bet you there's people in this building don't even know what a live elk in the woods looks like.
Sure.
They're making policy for people like us that we live in these places, right? And we're the ones that have to deal with their bad policies, because that's how it is.
And I think all we ever ask for is to please understand where we come from. And if you make a policy, don't apply it to us. Like I work with Senator Pham on housing, and I actually want to talk to you about Douglas County housing, and we can kind of wrap it on that.
Sure.
But I work with her, and she's been good to work with on housing,
Yeah.
because I've finally got her to understand, like, in Portland, you build stuff that's more than 2 stories.
Yeah.
We don't build stuff that's more than 2 stories outside of, really the metro area. It just doesn't happen, right? Like, we are not going to I'm not going to build a 3-story apartment complex in Prineville. It's not going to happen.
No.
So, and I think she's really starting to understand that, but it really took a lot of time to, like, discuss that with her and just say, I don't mind if you guys want to talk about elevator issues and stairwell widths and stuff. Fine with me. That's great. I mean, if you think that's a barrier to housing in Portland, I don't care. Like, that's great. We're on board, right? But don't apply some of your same mentality in regards to like how wide my width should be, or a tree code
Yeah.
that I should have in
Yeah.
Roseburg or Prineville or something. That's really been our biggest thing. So
Well,
and she's kind of starting to get there, right?
I mean,
at least on that issue.
Gamba and I tangled on that issue, something similar to that, because he wanted to pass a bill that made it mandatory for 50% of the parking stalls in a developed, like a apartment complex
Yeah.
for low income housing all over the state has to have chargers in them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just sitting in committee. I want to just scream at the top of my lungs, like, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and if you watch that committee hearing, the argument went on and on. I'm going, look, we don't drive electric cars in freaking Tiller, Oregon. You couldn't get your electric car to downtown Roseburg from Tiller if you wanted to, right?
Yeah.
Maybe on a good day and you got a full charge or whatever. And he wants to make this a statewide mandate. And I'm going, this is not how the rural Oregon works.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's ever set foot outside of Milwaukee or wherever he lives other than
Yeah.
coming to Salem.
I would agree. I think on the housing front in Douglas County, there was a bill and it came through Senate Housing, and it was a land swap bill.
Yeah.
Moving some
3921.
land, and it was we're really in favor of land swaps. It was in the governor's housing bill in 23 that ended up getting pulled out and died because the OLCV and the Crazy Thousand Friends hate land swaps, and of course they were all like, "Oh, we like this bill," right up until it came out, and then all of a sudden we hate this bill.
Yeah.
And it to the Democrats' credit, they still let it go through. But it really made me think, like Roseburg, and I started looking at Roseburg, and I was like, "Wow, you actually have a housing problem
Big time.
in Roseburg that I don't think people even think about."
No.
And you were on the planning commission, so the problem there is it just land, or is it just there's not a lot of builders, or what's the real housing, or just all combination of all those things?
The number. So you're talking about how the bill you're talking about is House Bill 3921, and one that I brought forward and supported. The problem with land is it's a state problem that affects local, and the reason is we have all this wetlands. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So we have property all around Roseburg that could be developed. You got like maybe a piece that's a third of an acre here and a half an acre here, but half of that third is in the wetlands. So you can't develop on it, or if there's too many restrictions as to what can be done. Now sometimes people are going around it anyway, and they're just building the house on that one part of that third of an acre, and then they put a driveway over the wetlands at some other date, and people just don't know. So that's kind of not good either, right? But not allowing swaps, you just create this checkerboard of a mess, and just eliminate any ability to build a house. It takes too much effort, too many dollars, and they need to be able to swap some of those wetlands. That's part of the problem. The other part of the problem is the nature of where we're at, right? I mean, you're either on a mountainside, a hillside, or you're in a flat. So it's hard to build. In fact, we just saw with this recent rainstorm we had down there, we had a lot of homes that were built within the last 10 years that had real serious landslide issues and erosion issues around them because they're built on hillsides. So this particular swap allowed us to take some unbuildable, undevelopable hillside and swap it with a 220 acre piece of land that's relatively flat. And it was a great idea. Now, I understand where you have people that live there that are like, we don't want to be annexed into the city. We don't want to pay city taxes. They don't have to be. That wasn't the point of the bill. If you don't want your land annexed into it, fine, don't. But your neighbor down the street might want to develop, right? So if he wants to build 10 houses or 10 apartments, whatever he wants to do, now he can do that. And and they would have to be annexed, that part of would be. So you potentially will end up on an island by yourself at some point, and that happens all over the state.
Well, what's the one thing that, one, I think you're right about just the topography of that area. Roseburg is not flat. And that whole, all Douglas County is nothing but up and down, which is why it takes you 4 hours to get from one end to the other.
Exactly.
And I think what they have to, and that's part of recognizing the fact that every community is different. And that's why land swaps are a good idea. One, because when they did Senate Bill 100, they just dropped the pin and did a circle, and then they just said, and now they still call it all housing. Like, you got all this, there's all this land in the UGB. And like, a lot of it's unbuildable. So land swaps, we're hopefully going to work on a bill in the interim that does a land swap thing that allows cities to do this without coming to the legislature. There's got to be a process.
Right.
Streamline, because if it's unbuildable land, or also somebody owns land who doesn't want to build.
Right.
then fine. We're not gonna let you build homes, and we're gonna let somebody that wants to. And because I think part of that is the willing. That's part of our problem with housing is you got to put it in spots where people are willing to build homes.
Yeah, and this land was kind of locked up like that, and it was just one of those things. It was already the city had already gone to to Luba or whatever. They were working on it, and it was just in one of those perpetual motion things that just never seemed to come to pass. But eventually this would have happened anyway, but it might have taken 10 more years. In the meantime, we don't have any houses, so I took a little heat on that bill. I mean, I don't there's always those people, Brock Smith calls them the cave people, citizens against virtually everything, right?
Yes.
And I can tell you that if I see a bill that has an opposition of the 1,000 friends or whatever, I'm probably for that bill, right? So, I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to the way those guys do their business other than they just hate progress.
I call the 1,000 Friends of Oregon now it just left my brain. The worship they're basically Tom McCall worshipers. I mean that is what it is. Is they just worship the legacy of a guy who I think was probably a pretty good governor and had some ideas, but these guys all believe that laws are supposed to change with the times, and then they're like, but we cannot touch Senate Bill 100. We cannot touch land. We have these goals, and we should not adjust these goals for modern times. You know what they probably didn't have in the 1970s when he was governor? A housing crisis. No, I just think they didn't like people, and they didn't want them to come here. And visit, don't stay. And it's like, but also you can't ever stop people from moving to your state because we're a free country that has literally U.S. constitutional protection from that. We can't build a wall between California.
Our industry has evolved from the 70s. I mean, we were a timber estate, right? I mean, that's what we did. I logged. I worked in the woods. I worked in the mills. That's what we did, in the 60s, 70s, 50s. Now we've devastated that industry. It just doesn't exist like it used to. The amount of jobs are, I don't know what the number is, but it's a lot less than it used to be. And I feel like the state's in a flex right now. We're trying to figure out what to do next, right? And we keep pushing toward high tech, but we don't have the workforce. We don't have.
Right now, Intel's in a lot of trouble, and so hopefully they can right the ship and everything's gonna be fine there. But I'll tell you that if Intel starts to go, there's a whole bunch of industry right around them in Hillsboro that are built that all go with it, and then we're in a real heap of trouble. That really crushes our tax revenue.
So you would think the legislature would be doing everything they could to make sure that doesn't happen.
No.
But we are doing everything we can to make it harder. We're taxing them more. We're requiring green energy. We're not giving them a break for anything. And and so we may end up earning, or we may own what we did.
Yeah, the disciples of Tom McCall. That's what I call them. The disciples of Tom McCall. Roll that out next time Gamba annoys you. Just call them the disciples of Tom McCall and see what happens.
The Gamba's
He'd be like, who's that?
Gamba's a cave person for sure.
So. Well, we appreciate you, Representative Osborne. You are the House Republican whip. Right, that's why you got to stand up there and read your motions, and so it's a great job. Everybody, I'm sure, is coveting and really wants to do. But we appreciate you for doing it. Appreciate you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate being on it.
And then you can catch his show. I watched some snippets of your YouTube. I like your studio you kind of set up. I'm sure it wasn't $30,000, but I'm sure it was a little cheaper like ours. But it was nice on YouTube. It is on The Verge. If you just do that. Yeah. You look at VIRG in YouTube, it'll pull you up. Right. I thought it was good. I think you're doing some good stuff there. Yeah, we're good. I mean, you put Scarlatos on there a little too much, but
Well, we got Junker on. We just released another one today.
Oh, did you? Nice. Yeah.
And I warned everybody at the start of the show. I'm like, hey, this one's going to be partisan. So if you don't want to listen to this, now might be a time to get a cup of coffee and do something else.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks again. We appreciate it. And good luck in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you guys will see the smoke. So, thanks, guys.